Hello and welcome to Leashed Dads podcast. I am Jared.
I'm Justin.
We are two leashed dads that get together to discuss our everyday lives while changing our parental responsibilities. And tonight we are discussing, feeling disconnected from our kids and vice versa. Disconnected growing up from our parents as well. What brought this up? This is your topic, man. What made
Yeah,
you think about this?
no, so I've been listening. This is a shout out to a podcast in a way. It's called Dungeons and Daddies, where got a couple or a few people get together. They play. I won't say it's an older podcast, but there's a podcast that was back out in 2020 or so. I think they're still
Okay.
going on, but they play Dungeons and Dragons together, and it turns out their dad's going on an adventure into the Forgotten Realms in search of their sons, um, or their kids. But at this time, I've been listening, like binging it and everything here recently. But um, there's one character, Ron Stampler. He is a stepdad, right? Um, Emotionally unattached and everything, or emotionally detached. But I just started thinking about it, and I started thinking about my kids and how, or just all these guys that are going on this adventure and trying to get their sons back, and all of a sudden their sons are being taken away from them. And it just got me thinking on such an emotional level. I'm like, I, for some reason, feel like my kids are somewhat disconnected from me. The, just because it started getting this adventure of theirs started getting me thinking about my kids a little bit and how much I feel like I'm actually connected with them on like an emotional level, or always being there or not being there, right? Um, it just started opening up my eyes a little bit to the idea of like, okay, what about Kane? How much connection do I feel with him? Him not always being able to talk with us or anything. Um, my or Arlo and Nico having a hard time, you know, being able to open up or whatnot, and just other things we've done, right? Uh, or just feeling like I'm not doing something right, and they're not like feeling connected with me, or I don't feel connected with them all the time, because sometimes they sit on electronics for a
Yeah.
good portion of the time. So it's like, okay, well, I feel like I could connect with them a little better rather than just being like, earlier I was playing with Arlo. He brought home, which is something really exciting because I've always thought about this. I remember in second grade where a group of kids and I in school, we made board games. That was one of our projects.
Yeah.
Well, Arlo brought home his board game that he made, which is really, really cool. It's just a little like, here's your numbers, like on a piece of construction paper. He wrote down like numbers, kind of like Candyland,
Got it.
right? You
Yep.
pick up the card, you see there's two green squares or whatever, so you move two green squares. But
Yeah.
this one was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there was a couple like 10 spots in there, or like tens on there, and you'd move 10 spaces essentially. Um, and so him and I started playing that. I felt connected with him at that point, just because we were doing something together
Right.
versus, okay, hey dad, you want to do something? No, I'm a little busy, right? Blowing them off or feeling disconnected, things of that nature. Yeah, that's just kind of where my head started going after listening to the Dungeons and Dads or Dungeons Daddies podcast and everything. Um, and just the adventures they go on. It just sent me down a rabbit hole to think about my decisions as a parent, and how much I feel connected with my kids, or disconnected with my kids. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think it's also a very critical thing for us to know, and how it can affect our children's development, like even for their futures. Like they see that we're disconnected with them, so why should they connect with their kids if they have kids? Like, it develops how they want to be a
Oh,
parent and
yes.
everything too.
Yes. I agree.
So, I mean, that's kind of where my head's at right now. I'm just trying to figure out uh, and share some stories about how I feel connected or disconnected from my kids, and maybe what's a better way to stay connected with them rather than feeling always disconnected or starting to feel that. So I think this episode is going to be a little deeper. I feel just kind of more of a thinking side of things. How, it might hit some people's emotions a little bit, but I think that's a good a good thing. Get you to start thinking as a parent about making that not only physical connection where you hug or talk to your kids, but connecting on an emotional level as well. Because all connections with your children are important.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and like I said, right now, there are times where I don't feel so connected with my kids just because I can let them do their own thing. But at the same time, I'm home and I'm around and I want to be with them. But yet they're sitting on their electronics, or we're always sitting on our electronics just doing nothing. Just kind of in the same vicinity, physically next to each other.
But you're not talking, you're not
But
interacting, you're just next to each
exactly.
other.
It's like, what's the point of being a family if you're going to sit next to each other and not interact? Have you ever felt that
Well,
way?
yeah, I do
It's,
feel
it's
guilty about like the nights that we have, like movie nights or something that we spend on the couch together. Yeah, we're not talking, we're not doing activities together, but we're close. We're they're on my lap, or I'm laying down and they're on my chest or something, and just
mhm,
we're close. It's not like they're in a chair across the room or whatever. I mean, they're close to us, and
right.
spending time with each other. But I've made an effort as much as I mentally can, because and I'll get into this later, but I've made an effort to do things with them that I enjoy: going to the racetrack, going in the basement and doing Hot Wheels, going, to the music box, and what else? There was like coloring and just talking with them and coloring and whatnot. And then also,
Hmm.
I tend to have 2 to 3 nights a week where we actually have a sit down meal with or without mom, because mom has to work.
Right.
So we talk about your day, and we go over feelings and whatnot. And so I'm making an effort as much as possible to do that, but at the same time, with what you said, I have always not I mean, for the majority of my childhood, felt disconnected from my parents. And I think I brought this up in previous episode, but they did not, they did ask me about my emotions and everything else, and situations
Hmm.
like that, but they never reciprocated that I remember. I don't remember them being like, you know what, this is what I'm going through right now. This is what this is what I fear. So part of me not remembering that, or not having that, is kind of like where I'm sitting now. I'm having a hard time right now. Actually, I a couple episodes I was doing great and on a high with positivity and everything else, but now I'm going through some emotions, and I don't know if they're real or not. I don't know if they're to be expected where I am in my life, because my parents at my age now, they didn't share what they were going through. It was always, mommy and daddy have some problems, and you don't need to worry about it. Not,
Hmm.
no, I'm not saying that like marital issues. I'm saying like troubles at work, troubles with friends, kind of things like that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really expect them to dive into their marriage with me at the age of like 10.
I don't think of how detrimental that is to your health, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I really wouldn't have understood. But like taking a conversation with your younger child and expressing your feelings and emotions in a way that they would understand, kind of thing.
Nope.
That was
That's,
my soapbox.
no, no, it's a great thing to bring up too, because in, I think one of the hardest things to do is try to connect with the kid on an emotional level. It's very easy for you to connect with them physically, right? Like my son Arlo, he loves, he comes up to me when when I come home, or he comes home from wherever. I get a hug, or I'll get a random hug throughout the day too when we're home
Yeah,
together. And it's like, oh, great. I love that. It's
me
very
too.
easy, and he feels
Yep.
connected that way. I feel connected with him that way. But from an emotional standpoint, it's a whole nother story. It's something completely different, because how are you supposed to, I mean, like you said, you share your things, your thoughts, right? Sometimes you're afraid or whatnot as well, but they don't reciprocate that. They don't bring back. Have maybe there is some sort of attempt that you just don't recall, and
Yeah.
they probably won't recall either. But how do we remember that? How are we supposed to remember if they're reciprocating?
I think that if there was a significant moment that, and it was a regular occurrence, it would have been ingrained into my memory. But because, like, right now, I have a habit of being closed off from my kids because that's how I feel that I was raised.
See, and kind of like what I said earlier on, right? You were closed off in a way from your parents, because they're like, this is our daddy's having problems right now. You don't have to worry about it. Instead of him sharing and caring, right? Not saying he's not a caring dad or anything like that, but at the same time, he's just not burdening you with his problems as a family or friends or things of that nature. It's his problem. He needs to resolve it. And that's
It
something you
created
can
distance,
learn,
though.
but it did create, yes, it creates
Yeah.
distance, right? Um, I see, as we're talking about this, I catch myself, or I'm starting to think a little bit, like just quick thoughts, like, yeah, I remember doing that with my kids a little bit here and there, or just how recent of one I've done it. Like I think even today, or tonight, I was asked to drop something off, and I told the kids I'd be right back. I got to take something to mom. I just told them, bam, I'm just taking an item to mom and whatnot. Or there's been times where we tell the kids it's, kind of like A to B conversation, right? And then they try to get in on the conversation, and we're always trying to tell them, it's like, okay, it's an A to B conversation, see yourself out, right? Or
Yeah.
one of those things, they try to chime in or whatnot. And I mean, I'm a hypocrite too when I do it and they're doing it. It adds another, it's a side tangent. I apologize, but um, it's still little things where they're trying to feel connected with you in a way, or they're trying to be part of something with you. And I, as a parent, have kind of pushed them out like that, just because it's like you don't know the full story, or you don't know all the details, because you've only been half listening.
Right.
So, but as far as feeling connected, I can't really recall much of not feeling connected with my parents as a child, or disconnected. um I, I guess there's just me that I won't say I didn't really care as to what was going on, but I was always pretty well off too, right? It wasn't like, because we always did things together on Sundays. Like we did, yes, Sunday night, or Sundays was a day of football. We'd always, Dad would turn on TV and we'd watch football every day, every Sunday. Then we'd uh, watch after football, not necessarily watch the or the Sunday night game, but we'd watch like, oh, what's Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
So it's like, yeah, we're,
Yeah.
to your point though, right? Watching the movie together on the couch or whatnot. Well, we'd all watch that TV show in the living room together. We connected as a family by sitting down and watching something together. We always ate dinner together. We, I felt connected to my family that way. Yes, I still do that with my children. We, eat dinner together, we'll watch movies together, right? Whether they are truly fully paying attention or whatnot, that's a whole nother story. But that, I think about it that way too. I was a kid. Was I really paying attention the entire time to everything we watched? Maybe, maybe not. But then again, I didn't have a cell phone or a tablet at my fingertips all the time either. I think that's another factor. Look at the technology. Do you, I guess with that being said, do you think technology is ruining like our emotional or our needs to connect with our
Yes,
children, or it's
yes,
ruining the kids' needs to connect with their parents?
both. I do
Both.
think that.
Yeah. I think in 2024 or just the, age of technology, right? Technology is ruining that physical and emotional connection. Like we all like I remember my parents still have a landline. Yes, they have their cell phones, but they still have a landline. I call that number some every now and then too, just to see if they're home. If they answered, I know they're home. If it goes to voicemail, well, then they're not home. It's true. Like I could honestly call them on their phone, on their cell
Yeah,
phone. I could look them up on Life 360 or whatever and see if they're at home. But if I'm on my way somewhere, like thinking, okay, I'll head over to their house, I'll give them a call on their home phone. If they answer, awesome. I could answer because I could call their phone, right, their cell phone. It'd be like, hey, are you home? And they tell me no. It's like, okay, well, fine. That does, calling their cell phone doesn't do me any good if I want to go over to their house.
yeah, right. No, and I fantasize a lot about just ditching my smartphone and getting like a flip phone or something. Just
Hmm.
to just stop. I don't. It's not healthy, and I know it's not to be sitting here doom scrolling when I could be hanging out with my kids.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yep. Like I know I get sucked into games on my phone too. That's the big problem. That's where I that's another thing that kind of sparked it too. It's like I'm sitting on my couch or I'm sitting next to my kids, but not again interacting with them like we would used to when we were younger, right? Playing board games with our parents or our siblings and things of that nature. Now we're just like, yep, all right. Like my kids have no problem playing together when it comes to video games. Like they'll play Roblox together. They'll play Minecraft together. Um, does it get a little? Is there a little tension? Yes, because they're talking about like an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. The 7-year-old is having problems, right, when it comes to getting beat by his older brother and everything like that. We try to tell him it's like if you're getting frustrated, you gotta stop playing.
Yeah,
You know, we can always try to tell the 11-year-old to go easy, but it doesn't teach the 7-year-old anything either if he gets fed victories and things of that nature. But no, so connecting. What are some ways that you can think of to help parents like ourselves reconnect or try to stay connected?
are you talking like interactive activities or like
Well,
sit down
I mean,
conversations?
well, sit down conversations for the emotional. I mean, if you're feeling like you're not physically connecting with your kids, what are some activities you can do? I mean, I know one good thing to do is just ditch the phones, ditch electronics, like make a schedule or something, or make it a habit once a week. You guys seriously just throw your phones into a bucket or something, right? Put your electronics aside and do something together. Board games, albeit whatever,
Yeah, I
right?
think I
What
like
are
that idea. That that's a good idea. You could take a page from my book and do something together. Build a Hot Wheels track. Maybe go out and buy a Lego set if you're well off because they're not cheap. But go out and buy a Lego set and do that together, and then just talk. Because it's not a very loud thing to
yeah,
build those things. So you just talk about your day, and also for those of you who have separate dinners, or there's phones a lot of the table or something. You just nope. Dinner is for eating and talking about your day and your feelings, and we're not going to be discussing phones or looking at our phones.
So
So
what do you mean by separate dinners?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen families where, dad is working somewhere with his plate of food and the kids are either in front of the
Mm.
TV or something, and mom's doing her thing or whatever. Uh,
So you might all
you
be
know,
eating the same dinner, but in different locations or not
yeah,
together.
yeah,
Okay. Because when you said separate dinners, I'm like, yeah, okay. I let my kids have their own, free for all, right? Fend for themselves at some point, just because it's like I don't want to necessarily cook or I feel like a little lazy just because I don't have anything
yeah. So,
mentally
well,
prepared. But
right. Well, in our house, there's like 1 or 2 days a week where we make the kids dinner and then we continue cleaning the kitchen or
mhm,
doing a project that we're working on because they need to get fed on their schedule. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose.
yeah,
So, my wife and I will eat whenever we feel like it and not necessarily when they do, or even the same thing. I don't want chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. That's all them. I'm
mhm,
gonna make my pork dumplings later tonight when I have a little more time. But right now,
there you
I'm
go.
cleaning the kitchen and doing laundry because
So you,
time is rare. But I do make the effort of having a real meal at the dinner table, a couple nights a week where we discuss things.
the other thing too, I with the kids, and I know this just kind of goes along with them wanting, holding a conversation or their capabilities of holding a conversation. Connection with school,
Mm.
like you want to know how they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we have parent teacher conferences, things of that nature, ways to communicate with their teachers, but I don't like the fact that they don't always expand on their school. Like I
Right.
go, how was school? Good,
Fine. Yeah. Good.
fine, yeah, one word answers, or you get the it was okay, right? Sometimes you just gotta, it's like you're at a dental office and you gotta pull teeth to get what you're looking for to strike
Yeah.
a conversation. It drives me nuts. It makes it feel very difficult to try to connect with them at that point. I feel like I honestly feel that sometimes we as parents forget that children don't always have that concept of holding a good conversation.
Hmm.
Um, and then, we just want to give up on trying to connect.
Right.
So, again, there's that physical, there's the emotional, and there's like a conversational connection. I feel like there's a lot of different types of connections you could make with your kids. It's just how much effort do you put in, or how much effort are you going to let them put in? Do you feel there's like a weight or a percentage that one side should give more than the other? Like as a parent, do you feel, or do you think parents should put more effort into trying to make a connection with their children, or do you think, or is it more of a fit? Does that make
I'm gonna
sense?
say 50-50. I mean, at first it might be a little bit more weighted towards the parent, but eventually you want the 50-50.
I think as kids get older, yes. I think
Yes.
I think well, let's see. As I'm trying to think about teenage years, right? Parents still try to keep up with their kids, but their kids are becoming more and more independent, right? They want their own they want their own things. They want less to do with their parents.
Yeah, but do you think that that's only because that there's been distance, or do you think that if there was this communication that we've been talking about many years, do you think they would still want that or feel the need to be completely independent from their parents?
Um I almost feel like we've both set each other up with loaded questions.
Yeah,
Um
right.
right? That's how I'm thinking about it now. It's
uh,
like, oh shit, I just gave him a loaded question. He's returning it with another loaded question. Um,
right back
yeah,
at you.
exactly. No, so there's really probably no good way to answer this
No, and it's
because
everybody's different. So
everybody's different. Every family is raised differently, or every child is raised slightly differently. I feel as teens get, or as kids get older and become more of a teen, they just want that independence, and it's not. like, there are some that are like, yes, they're distant because they've never had that connection. There are some that are just like, okay, I do need my space, even though we've been connected this entire time. You've done a great job, but I still need to, you know, live my life because you've taught me to live my life, to go out and live my life. So that's where I'm saying it was a loaded question, right? Because
Yeah.
you could do a great job parenting, and then all of a sudden, like, the kid is still connected to you on all levels, but now you need to let them leave the nest essentially and start trying to fly. Um,
Right.
Whereas other ones are like,
Oh, excuse
I've
me.
never had a connection with my parents. I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to connect with them at all.
Right.
And you know, coming from a dad of young kids, or coming from both of us with young children, we haven't gotten there yet. Um, but I do, you know, I speak from experience being a teenager. There's been times where I'm not necessarily trying to distance myself from my parents, but I'm trying to distance myself, do my own thing, um, rely less on, because they're not going to always be around.
Right.
I can't, I mean, they still help me out. They honestly still help me out. And it's very appreciative. I'm very appreciative of everything they've done. Like, they've given, they help us watch the kids. They, when we hang out, when we go to their house, obviously they pay for their meals and everything. They'll pay for our meals when we go out to dinner together, whatnot. They, you know, those are things that they love doing. Um, and they've also done some other things, like they've given us some big, like, when Sam and I got married back in 2018, they helped pay for the wedding.
Nice.
They, um, then on top of that, they gave us a decent wedding gift. I thought the wedding gift itself was paying, helping pay for the wedding essentially, but they gave us a decent wedding gift of like a new fridge.
Chili.
Our fridge at that point was terrible. It needed to be updated. Now we have a French swing door fridge.
Ooh la la. Oh.
Oh, El La Frigo.
Yeah. Right.
But no, so
I
I
get
mean,
it though.
yeah, I feel connected with them, and I feel what they do, I think, helps them try to feel connected with us, or with me and with my family. Not saying they don't necessarily feel connected by other means, because we do still do things with them. But I feel like sometimes as parents, we will always try to go a little further, per se, to make an effort to connect with our children when we feel like there's nothing there all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But that's because we are, I think, overdoing it. So keep that in mind. You might, as your children get older, remember they are trying to develop their own space, their own bubbles, their own lives. But if you know you've done a good job, and they tell you thank you or whatever it may be, and they just ask for that space, don't be afraid to step back, because I think at that point, and I'm going to have to try to remember this myself, but at that point, I know that I'm still connected with my kids, and they will come to me asking for help or whatever it may be. So all around, I know that connection is complete. They will still rely on me when it really matters.
Yeah. I like that.
Hopefully that answers that loaded question a little bit.
Yeah. It does.
And I like how you answered the whole thing about where it should be. You know, in an ideal world, yes, I think it would be 50-50. But we all know that we're not living in an ideal world.
Right.
At some point or another, I feel like it's always going to rely more, or you're going to see more of the parents actually doing the effort, or putting in the effort to connect with their kids. And I also feel like I personally feel like it is probably the parents that should be doing it a little bit more. I do see more of a balance, though, along the way as the kids get older. It does, I think it should draw near the 50-50, but you're not going to be exactly at 50-50. I think it's still going to be like a 60-40 or 55-45.
Yeah.
And obviously the bigger numbers are geared towards the parents. because you're still trying to protect your children or just make sure that you can help them learn to live their life or learn things. And if they're not, in an ideal world, if it was 50-50, they'd be asking you questions, you'd be answering, you'd be asking them questions, you'd all be making these connections. You'd
Genuine
be
conversation.
genuine conversations. Just
Yep.
wouldn't be afraid. They wouldn't be afraid to ask you a question, and then you wouldn't be afraid to give them the answer that they need, the truth, or if it's a question we don't necessarily know, or it's not an easy question to answer, you're still going to do the best you can, but you're not going to brush it off by any means. Have you ever felt like you have brushed your children off, and then all of
Oh
a
yeah.
sudden you probably regret it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that a few times, obviously, and that's another reason why I want to talk about this too. It's because I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here, and if you are gonna tell me you're one of those parents that hasn't done it yet, I'm gonna say you're one of two people. You're either lying or you think you're not lying.
Yeah.
You're lying to us or you're lying to yourself because everybody I've done it already. I've brushed my kids off. And that's where I feel like I start losing connection is because you think about it and you go, now they don't want to do something with me because I've already told them no, or I'm a
Yeah.
little busy. So they're expecting the same result.
I had to brush them off because of my job. I can't play with them outside when I got a job to do.
See, now that is a different story, though. You're at work. That's that is, I would say, more understandable. The brush off I'm talking about is you're at home, you're off the clock, and all of a sudden they ask you to do something like paint or color or play
Oh yeah.
Legos or things of that nature. And it's like, no, I'm cooking or I've got to start doing this, right? Instead of just taking the time to maybe prolong the cooking or whatever, or start cooking, but then still go play with them, right? And just be like, okay, well, I got to, excuse yourself from the dollhouse or whatever. Like, I will be right back. I've got to go check on the food. Something of that, right? That's the brush off I'm honestly talking about. Work is
Okay.
work. Yes, if you work from home as a parent that or as any type of parent that is remote working and questioning that, if you have to brush your children off from that, I I'm not counting that as brushing children off because you wouldn't be home if you weren't working remote. If you were
Yeah.
working and you weren't working remote, you wouldn't be able to obviously you wouldn't be able to brush them off, but you have to because it's your job and if you aren't working while you're on the clock, you could lose your job. So that to me does not count. Where now when you are off the clock and you say you don't want to do anything with them, that's what I'm talking about. Truthfully, that is where that true connection. I feel if you explain to your children too, it's like, I'm sorry, I can't play. Because I've done that multiple times with my son when he was only in like pre-K or half days of school. He wanted to play. I'm like, sorry, buddy, I've got to go back down to work. You
Yeah.
know, a little more understanding. Whereas if you're at home, off the clock, and then they ask you to do something and you tell them no, it's like, well, what's your excuse now? And you've just got to as a parent, you can rearrange your time, especially since your kids have limited time before you have to put them to bed if they have a bedtime. So, food for thought. If you think you're brushing or you're not brushing your kids off, you probably have. And if you're saying no, you're lying to yourself or you're lying to us. What else, Jared? What else do you think about reconnecting or finding ways to reconnect with your kids or avoiding the hard topic of not feeling disconnected from your kids?
I think I've said my piece. I don't really have much else just try to interact as much as possible with them by doing an activity, and make sure it's something that you guys could talk during. Board games, Hot Wheels,
Yeah,
fishing,
find something to do.
bond. You know, it's part of the bonding. That's really what it is.
Yeah. If your kids ask you to do something, it doesn't have to be you the one initiating saying, let's go fishing or hiking or whatever. Maybe if they ask you to come play dolls with them because you have the girls, for example, Daddy, come play dolls with me, or Daddy, do this with me. You know, my daughter brings me books, wants me to read. Great, let's read. Or if your kid has homework and they need help, don't sit there and make them try to do it on their own. Try to work with them. It may seem agitating, knowing that it's like, okay, have you tried to do it yourself or whatnot? But in the long run, guess what you're still doing? You're bonding. You're connecting. You're taking your time and using and putting effort towards doing something with your child. It's going to mean a hell of a lot more to them than you think it does. I'm learning that. I'm doing homework with my son, Kane, math. And now, yes, I have to brush off a lot of stuff for myself, and I'm not exactly a fan of their workbook on their
I
Chromebook
know.
or anything
Yeah.
because it doesn't really have like it's like here's lesson 14.1. Okay, well, it doesn't really say anything about how we're going to do this, right? But I might have to look at his Chromebook and go through and be like, all right, where in the world did they start talking about finding the area of a triangle? Because that's what he's doing right now. He's finding areas of polygons, irregular. He had to find the area of an irregular polygon for one of his assignments. And I sat there just racking my brain. I'm like, what the fuck? I could not figure it out for the life of me. And even after like trying to look it up on Google and everything, just like how the hell do I find the area of an irregular polygon? Um, I wasn't getting the right answer. And I know because we were submitting the questions, and he was getting a 3 out of 4. And it would tell you
Okay.
that the question was incorrect and it would hide the correct answers. But I wasn't trying to use that as a cheat or anything, be like, all right, let's
Right.
fill this out and find out the correct answers. I was like, okay, I'm still getting this wrong. What am I doing wrong? Because that's, to me, what was very important. It's like, okay, I did something wrong. I'm still trying to figure it out. What can I do to change it and make it better? I had one of my guesses in math was actually pretty close, but it was still off. And then Kane had went to a tutor appointment that he's got that we put him through, and they helped get through it, which is great. So, and then I asked Kane, it's like, okay, what did you guys do, and how did you figure it out? It's like, oh yeah, that would make sense. Combine two of the shapes, or if you break the shapes down, you combine the two
Yeah,
triangles
I'm
to make it a whole
seeing
and
that
things.
now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's just one of those things I didn't think about. I'm like, all right, let's just separate them or make them shapes because that's what it was
Just
saying,
add them
right?
together.
Yeah. But I forgot about adding, if they were two triangles, you could add them together to make rectangles, right? And just make it a little easier and then divide it by half eventually. Oh, but yeah,
All
that was
right.
in the right direction, just trying to do other things. So,
Yeah.
folks, connect with your kids. Don't brush them off. Yes, there are times where you have to just make sure their kids understand it. So if you have to really let them know that now is not a good time. Don't brush them off because you're on your phone
Yeah.
or on some
Yeah.
other
Right.
That's a big thing too. Nope.
Yep.
I'm sorry. As you sit looking at your phone, playing a video game or whatever, playing an app, and brush them off. Don't do that. It's not going to help them. It's only going to teach them the wrong way, and then you're going to realize it, and you're going to see it when they have kids and you have grandkids, if you have grandkids. Anyways, wanted to give a shout out again. This episode was somewhat inspired by Dungeons and Daddies podcast, the D&D podcast. um, this is also just inspired by real life events, of course. As always,
Yeah.
most of these episodes are inspired by real life things going on in our lives, in your lives. Um, Also, don't forget to hit, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that bell, hit that like button, comment, love us, tell us. Uh, Find other ways to follow us as well so you can get our content. Um, Also, go and hit up Jared. He's got those great motivational videos out there, and they're not just all motivational, but unlocking Jared potential, folks. He's going to help you unlock your potential. We'll see you next time
See ya.
with Leashed Dads.